Come and fly away with me. 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 Come and fly away.
Hey, what's up, you guys? It's your boy Ryan Morgan, dropping in with another episode of the Recovery Objects podcast. On this podcast, I like to discuss certain topics focused on recovery. Some language or content might be violent in nature. I might say some things that you might not agree with, and that's okay. I will always come forth with non-judgment and integrity. Whatever might be weighing on your heart is only temporary. I will always bring an authentic opinion. As a man in long-term recovery, I am dedicated to the process, and it's not my place to work anyone else's program than my own. I hope you understand this is not just a statewide issue. This is a worldwide issue. If we all can work together to fight these battles, we have enough energy to move mountains. I hope you enjoy this show as much as I did.
Let's go, boy!
Today on episode 1 of Recovery Objects podcast, Walter's episode. Let's take a moment for all the lives that have been taken by this evil disease. In honor of National Overdose Awareness Day, I introduce myself, giving you a clear idea of what I'm truly passionate about. I want to create awareness in my community so our youth will not follow in the same steps. It's my mission to break limited beliefs, crushing oppression, showing recovery
Is possible. You are listening to the Recovery Objects podcast, hosted by Ryan Morgan.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Thank you so very much. I appreciate you all so much for tuning in to my very first episode of Recovery Objects podcast. This has been something long time in the making. It's something that I've wanted to do for a very long time. I just didn't know that I wanted to do it for a very long time. I knew that there was always a way of getting out a message, or a way of getting out a message of hope to benefit whoever it might benefit. Other men, other women, people in recovery, young people, old people, one person, 1,000 people. To me, it really is just for myself, for me to have some way of journaling my life in recovery, and my journey through healthy eating, and my journey through becoming a man, becoming a leader of my family. I wanted to give just kind of a little bit backstory of my life, what I came from, where I came from, and just a small little glimpse of the struggles that I've been through. I'm not a huge person on war stories. I share them very, very lightly. When I do share them, though, I make sure that I'm very adamant and animated and 100% authentic. I know that being vulnerable will in return help other men become better fathers, become better husbands, become better boyfriends, become better lovers in general. And I've already felt the shift. I'm a testament of that shift in itself. So I'm just going to give a little bit backstory of my childhood, me growing up, just a small glimpse. Then I'm going to share some stories of hope, my life in recovery. We're going to kick it off with just a small introduction. I was born in Grand Junction, Colorado, typical white, semi-diverse neighborhood. My dad worked super hard to provide for the family. My mom was a very nurturing woman. She was always there for us kids. She did work part-time, but then raised us kids in the mix. One younger brother. I have one older sister. I grew up not really knowing what status meant. My family did, and it had to be more proper. But I got to see two sides of families that were very polar opposite. My dad's side was very different from my mother's side. I had a lot of friends I was very close with. In the town that I grew up in, of Grand Junction, people go together. So they start kindergarten, first grade, second grade, all together. Not a small town by any means, but not a massive city. We moved to Denver when I was 13. A very confusing time. I'm sure it's a very confusing time for a lot of kids, especially moving from one town to another town, and then being able to make friends, live somewhat of a normal life was pretty tough, especially going from Grand Junction, Colorado to Parker, Colorado. And for those of you that don't know, the county that I'm in now is a very affluent county. And Mesa County in Grand Junction has its pockets of higher end. I saw what money did to the kids, and I saw what money did to families and how it was presented to the kids that I went to school with. So it was very different. My dad was a pretty negative person, so my family kind of shied away from accepting him. In return, I think my family had a hard time kind of accepting me. I was kind of the black sheep. I did like to be the rebel and cause as much trouble as I could to get attention. I just wanted to be seen and heard both at the same time, but didn't know how to really grasp that from the people around me. I was very involved with a Christian Baptist church when I first moved to Denver. I enjoyed my time with them. We were a tight-knit group. We all got together, hung out, had an amazing time together. I was young, so I was 14 at this time, asked to come down to the Colorado Baptist Convention building, which is at Dry Creek in I-25, and told that my youth pastor that I had been friends with for some time was gay and that it was not acceptable in that church. Immediately at 14, my brain went to, if they are going to judge him off his flaws, then how will they accept me? Because at 14, I knew that I was flawed. I knew that I wasn't perfect. I knew that I had issues. I had already been told that in school. I'd already been told that from numerous people, that I had a hard time paying attention, or I had difficulties here, or I had opportunities here. I stayed in strong contact with my youth pastor, though, and I still do to this day. I learned right then, though, that I was going to live a life around zero judgment, and I didn't know that it would lead me to my recovery path today. I began opiates at 21. Alcohol was pretty rampant before that. I decided to try meth at 16. I went with a couple of friends and ketamine trip on the weekly. We partied it up when I was super young. I didn't start really drinking and partying with friends until 18, 19. Noticed that I was different. Noticed that I couldn't just enjoy a couple drinks. I couldn't just enjoy a little bit. It always had to be a lot of it. I remember the first time I did try opiates. I remember the feeling I got from it. I remember instantly falling in love. I lost my job right after that, emptied out my bank account, bribed, conned, stole so much to fund a $200 drug habit. I was working a great job running multi-unit restaurants. Tried my best to stay afloat. I tried to make myself seem so much better than I was, when I knew deep down that I was one of the worst of the worst. We all know how that goes, trying to be somebody you're not, trying to live a life that you know is not true. I entered my first rehab. It was a 2-week vacation that my job then paid for. Super plush vacation, super good food, loved the people there, made a great friend there as well, still talk to him to this day. It was an eye-opener because of the word rehab. When you got down to it, it was a very nice retreat. I entered about 3 more rehabs after that and did some extensive outpatient treatment, inpatient treatment as well, multiples. I can't even count on both hands how many times that I attempted to get clean and set out for that journey of recovery. Failed, quickly thereafter. In 2013, I was given my first of 2 distribution charges, both felonies, landed me a trip to the penitentiary. I was a white boy with suburban manners, no diversity taught, no open-mindedness involved. I judged everyone and everything, and I was destined to learn my lesson, landing me locked up on a constant basis. I'm not proud of that by any means. I don't like to brag about locked up business, although I do respect it. I respect it in the form that it taught me the lessons that I needed to learn. It taught me the lessons that probably my parents couldn't teach me at the time that I was growing up. It taught me a lot of lessons of how to treat other people, how to treat yourself in a time of crisis, how to hold yourself accountable in a time of crisis. While in booking to transfer to your block, so you go into a area of booking when you first come into the jail. They take the cuffs off, they fingerprint you, they measure you, they weigh you, do all that jazz. Then you're put into a holding tank, they call it, until you're listed to go to your final bunkhouse. It could be, if the jails are busy, it could be a couple of days. If they're not busy, it could be, super quick. I'm sure I've been to smaller jails too that are just a handful of people on deck. I've also been to prisons that have multiple thousands of people on deck. In this instance, it took me 3 days to make these calls. I was finally given the chance to make my calls. It was on August 31st. Actually, the day of National Overdose Awareness Day. I could just tell in my mother's voice right away that something was not good. She followed right after that they had found my dad. They had found my father dead. He had passed of an overdose. Methamphetamine. Obviously, it was a major shock. I had just gotten arrested. I had just gotten locked up. Knew that I was going to be going away for some time. And received that kind of news. I can't really remember the feeling. I remember surrounded by grown men in artillery suits, just setting up for war. Devastated man, just a broken ass man. Put me in a suicide vest and they placed me in a padded room. I just talked to my dad. He was really trying to live a normal life, a sober life. He had actually moved out to Wyoming to live with his sister. He had made some really great decisions to change his life and to better himself. He didn't have a ton of support from everybody around him, but he had enough to make a go at it. I wasn't able to attend his service. At the time, I was locked up in a county facility. We had actually looked into it. Obviously, for me to get out, it would have costed, I think, $3,000. A couple of officers would have had to transport me in both legs and arm chains. After a long talk with my family and my mom, I decided that probably wasn't going to be a great idea and I would just skip it. In 2016, a total opposite side of blessing, my beautiful, sassy daughter, Kiki, was born. She was just an angel given to me at the right moment. I had been working on my sobriety in 2015. It had been rocky, so 2016 came around and I knew that I had to make a conscious decision to change my life and decide which type of life I wanted to lead. I was going to be responsible now for a small child. Obviously, there was going to be bills to pay. With my past record and my past life, it was very hard to see me fitting in a normal life in that category. I attempted it the best that I could. Through the drugs, prostitution, prison, babies, I knew I had to get my mind healed, my heart healed. Took on the role of single father pretty early. I learned the stigmas pretty quick, what single fathers retain. There is not a ton of support for single fathers because we are looked at as providable. The stigma is that we should just be able to provide for our child. For most, that is the case. For me, obviously, my past had deterred me quite a lot. I was motivated to break the generational curses that I was given. I was so motivated to be able to learn from Kiki, to make me a better man and to make me be able to love another human being with unconditional love. I entered long-term recovery, like I said, in 2016, ridding myself of so many bad habits. Substance-free, drug-free. It was not an easy road. It was a necessary road. November of 2019, I was diagnosed with both COPD and congestive heart failure. I weighed in over 450 pounds, continued to try to maintain a normal life. I still went to work, walked quite often. I ended up wearing just Croc shoes because those were the only things that could fit on my fat feet. I couldn't fit in any more of my clothes, giving all my clothes away, buying multiple different wardrobes throughout the weight process. I believe I replaced my addiction with food. I kind of sought out my food for the day. I didn't really care what I ate, victim mentality. Since then, I've lost over 200 pounds, and now in 2021, I'm eating a now semi-clean, plant-based diet. I don't put labels on myself. I don't like to be labeled as a vegetarian or a plant-based person. I'd just rather not put a label on it, period. I don't eat meat. The reasons I don't eat meat is because of the way that our society treats the animals that we do eat. And the second reason is because of the energies that are exchanged within us consuming meat. And it's not a religious thing because I'm not religious. To be a spiritual being, you need to be aware of the energies that are around you. I once was directed that I was on my last leg. Doctor instructed I needed to get healthy. They stuck me on a air ventilator to sleep with for years. I slept with it for 2 years. During COVID, you might have all known that we were all short on ventilators. One of those ventilators was one that was in my bedroom, keeping me breathing at night. It would suck air into my lungs and then shoot air out of my lungs because I would stop breathing throughout the night multiple times and wake up without being able to breathe. Because of my weight, because of my health issues, and also because of the COPD in my lungs, I did inhale a lot of opiates throughout my years, so I'm sure that probably did a lot of damage on my lungs. During this time, they really did talk about amputation to my legs. So how grateful I am to be able to walk morning and night and be able to walk, period. Because at one time I really did have to put into perspective, I might no longer have my legs. I ended up being in the best shape that I've ever been in my entire life. I'm 36 years old now, been in recovery for 6 years with the loss of over 200 pounds. So not only was I fighting the demon of addiction, I was also fighting the war of our society deeming healthy eaters as weak or lesser than. And in reality, it was just a personal choice that I needed to make on my own, not for anyone else, just for myself, for my body, to be able to keep myself in check, to be the father that I am. I did end up meeting the most special woman, such a strong woman, almost perfect. She has a 2-year-old baby boy named Mason. They both accepted me and Kiki with open arms. I wouldn't want it any other way. I hope to continue to ensure my health with daily walks. I do walks in the morning. I do walks at nights. Just spending quality time with my family and the kids. Now that I have Mason in my life, I'm able to get out, go to the park. I'm able to take Kiki and Mason and go do certain things throughout the week that I wasn't able to do prior. Me and Kiki used to take the bus for years while raising her. I was given a habitual driving tag that took my license for 5 years, result of my addiction. It stripped me of my driver's license. I raised my child on the bus, a very humbling experience, a very necessary experience in my growth. I needed that. I needed to be humble at that moment. I did do a lot of my weight gain on the bus, but due to eating and drinking, I quit drinking alcohol, ridded myself of all alcohol, which was causing quite a bit of the damage. Just because I thought that I was done doing heroin and done doing opiates, I just continued to drink myself to death, in return almost losing my life. So when I do talk to men these days, I always like to bring up the fact of when is too much too much. I think when it takes away from your quality time, your role as a father or your role as a provider, I think then it becomes an issue. If you know that in yourself you need help, that's something that you need to seek out, then I definitely am here for you. I like to just extend that to anyone out there, if you ever need anything or need any help with any family members or friends, to please reach out to me and to anyone else that you know in recovery, and to try to get a perspective that you can't get yourself. In 2020, I ended up joining the Peer Coaching Academy, gaining my state certification, a mentoring program with the Arapahoe County Sheriff's Department in 2016. Landed me an awesome recommendation. Just this year, I am completing the Youth Coaching Institute with Dr. Mazzola out of Houston. Saved my life. It's allowed me to work with young people. It's allowed me to gain the knowledge of how to work with young people and then how to get myself to that level. Another practice of mine is yoga. Yoga truly saved my life. Yoga was something that I implemented in my journey during COVID, right before COVID. The reason I did yoga was I didn't want to go to any gyms, obviously, because they weren't open, but because I was too fat and didn't want anybody to see me, I would do it in my basement, in my room, and I would flip on YouTube and let it roll. Got myself a mat, all the other equipment, and went to town. I think that yoga definitely contributed to a lot of my weight loss. Meditating definitely contributed to a lot of my weight loss. Sound healing, some call it Reiki, contributed to a lot of my meditation practices and how I carry those out. I definitely have to say that yoga was the biggest of lifesavers. I started off with Pilates, actually with a big ball. I got one of those massive exercise balls. Somebody told me to use that as an office chair. While I was doing coaching at home, I would just use that ball as my office chair. That's how I slowly started doing yoga. The walks ended up being just so I could start walking to be able to complete the yoga, because my body was not in any shape whatsoever to be laying on the ground, moving in different positions and trying to extend my my flexibility. That wasn't in the cards at that time. You have to understand, my feet were just big enough to fit into Crocs. I'm a shoe collector. I was unable to wear any shoes other than my Crocs that were used just for restaurant work. So it was a very humbling experience. Something I take away from it now is being able to share my story with other people in hopes that yoga might save their life, in hopes that peer coaching might save their life. The certification that I'm working for now is the International Coaching Federation certification that I'm finishing with Youth Coaching Institute. It's put me right in the fire and made me become uncomfortable in certain situations. It's also been super great for my growth. I never thought that I'd ever work with youth. I didn't even want to work with kids until being a father and seeing child development all around me. I do believe in the village mentality and hold that pretty sacred. One of my good friends taught me that just recently, about 2 years ago, and I've adopted it pretty well and used it pretty accordingly. Village mentality just being where, you know, you have so many people around you that support you and love you, are definitely a positive influence on your journey. And I've had quite a few of those people. I'm super blessed to be around so many amazing people that love me and care about me. For as many bridges as I have burned, I'm super blessed to be able to be in anyone's presence, period. I hold that very highly. I know it's not easy to listen to these things, and it's not easy to talk about these things. Sometimes they're very uncomfortable for some people. Sometimes they're easier for some. I've been able to share my story quite often, so I've been getting used to sharing it more often in the last year or two. When I first started out on this journey, I would shed tears. I would be so nervous, shaking. I just started facing the public 2 years ago. I met my neighbors and they brought me out of my shell, kind of expressed to me that it was okay to be who I was, taught me how to get outdoors and respect nature, unconditional love with other people. I was very grateful to have those people around me and to be able to share those experiences that I had with other people and feel like they met me where I was with non-judgment. I can't even tell you how many times gratitude comes up for me. I love to just send out a message every once in a while, letting them know how much I love them and care about them and appreciate what they've done for me. I think that's super important to tell the people around you how much you love them and care for them when they're not expecting it and when you're not going to get any credit for it. One of my biggest pet peeves is when people do things and then want to receive the credit for it. I've been guilty of that obviously in the past and try to make sure that I don't in the future. Gloating is one thing that's very hard for me. It's been a 30-minute mark and I've taken up enough of your time. If you have any questions that you need to ask me, anything that you would like for me to bring up on this podcast or speak of, please feel free to message me on Instagram at recoveryobjects or email me at recoveryobjects@yahoo.com. I am on Facebook as Ryan Morgan. I hope soon to have the recoveryobjects.com up and running, be able to just host the podcast on that page. You're talking to a dude that put technology to the side for quite some time. I'm catching up. I'm still catching up. I hope to get us there, guys. Just the goal is to share the message that I have now and to just share a little glimpse of hope, let people know that recovery is possible and we can get out there and do it. Anything that you need from me, please hit me up and let me know. I really appreciate you guys tuning in to the show. Next week, I'm going to be bringing up different topics, relationships, parenting, finances, different topics that I can discuss that are geared towards recovery, are also geared towards just normal life. Don't think that I'm going to forget about us men out there. I do focus on us men, building boys into men, having us men be better fathers, be better husbands, be good to our women, respect our women, treat our women kindly. In return, they treat us kindly. It's just a conscious effort to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're all progressing. No man left behind. Big slogan of mine, no man left behind. Think that every man still deserves a second chance. I've been given so many different chances that I can only be just as gracious to somebody else. If there is somebody out there that needs help, or you know of somebody that needs help, please feel free to reach out to them and tell them that you love them and tell them that you care for them and that you're there for them. And if you can't do it, then get somebody that can. They want to be saved just as much as you want them saved. As long as we make this a continuous effort and a community effort, I think we can come a long way. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for joining the show, guys. Please go to cleancause.com. Use promo code CC Ryan Morgan. Over 9 flavors of organic, sparkling yerba mate with low or 0 calories, 160 milligrams of natural caffeine, and 50% of profits support individuals in recovery from alcohol and drug addiction.